Industry of tower construction has always been in place. The large difference of what changes have occurred over the last decades has been principally that it is shared infrastructure that rather than being 100% owned by the MNOs. So the first step that was taken in the industry were basically traditional sale and lease back transactions. And with time, that has been transferred over to the extension of what we call built to suit, which is principally done on additional towers that are contracted by the MNOs with the tower cos. This started in principle, not only for the simplicity of the rollouts, but also the depreciation cycles of these assets have been completed. So no sense in holding these assets on their balance sheet. It made it a lot more efficient to create a sale leaseback with a third party and streamline their operations while increasing liquidity for the MNOs to invest in other segments of their business. Mobile network operators require tower companies to optimize their CapEx. When transferring that cost over to the tower cos make the investments, while the MNOs or the mobile network operators are only responsible at that point for the rental payments. In addition to that, when you add a second or a third tenant to each of these towers, there's a large savings on the land lease when that bill is split in two or in three. And finally, and in general, the permitting and the construction build-outs are simplified by delegating that to a tower co, such as ourselves. The industry today has basically graduated with about 70 to 80% of all cell phone towers across the US being owned and operated by independent tower cos. In Latin America, that number is closer to 60%. And when you look at Europe, you're looking at more or less a 30, maximum 40% is owned by independent tower cos. Each tower assignment is identical in nature. We, on average, take 120 days to build out each of our tower assets. And it all starts with a assignment from the mobile network operator of a site. We call that a search ring. That search ring is a GPS coordinate with a radius around the GPS coordinate and a height requirement. This typically takes 0 to 15 days to secure a site that we will submit to the carrier for their approval. After that site has been approved, the rental terms that the carrier is willing to pay are met. We move on to the second portion of the business, which is the permitting, right? The permitting will take on average 0 to 60 days, and that includes municipal permits, zoning permits, or the equivalent of, let's say, the FAA in each of these markets. In parallel to the permitting, we internally also have the engineering teams who are responsible for not only ordering the proper tower, but also hiring the civil work teams to go out and build this asset. Construction periods on average will take 0 to 30 days in an urban site and 0 to 45 days in a rural site. So in summary, you're taking 120 days from start to finish to get every tower up and running, and 30 to 60 days after that tower completion, cash flow and rental payment starts to flow. I think 5G is a great opportunity for tower cos, not only on the tower front, but also on a separate segment of our business, which is the fiber rentals. And today, on average, you have every 3 to 4G tower with approximately 2 kilometers of distance between each other. What 5G actually means is more towers, which will be 200 meters across from each other. So the expansion of these networks into 5G will demand more towers, will demand more fiber. The large difference is they will be smaller in nature, closer in nature, and I think this is a great opportunity for tower cos for the next 5 to 10 years. So satellite, I don't see that as a threat. I think the focus for many of these satellite companies is to connect many of the rural, unserved jurisdictions globally that have never had internet. Sometimes I make the comparison to AOL dial-up, but today's demand, the data consumption, the speed that traditional cities are looking for will not and cannot be served by satellite companies. So I don't see that as a threat at all. The average tower cost today in each of the countries we operate in ranges between $75,000 to $100,000 per tower per site. This depends on whether it's rural or urban, whether it's 20 meters in height or 60 meters in height, and what wind capacities are required for where they're being placed. When you also compare this to 5G and the obligations that we'll meet, they will be small cells or smaller infrastructure when compared to the macro sites that we build today, but will be proportionally renting the same value. Well, the big difference between American Towers, SBA, and ourselves is they buy, we build. Our focus is purely on the build-to-suit component of the business. And on average, we're in from year 0 to year 10. They're in year 10 forward. So the focus of what they do is principally M&A. The focus of what we do is we're that trusted partner in developing new infrastructure for the carriers. So if you wanted to invest in the infrastructure tower space, there's 3 ways to do so. You have your traditional large tower cos, which in the Americas, there's 3: American Towers, SBA, and Crown. These stocks are $250 plus. You have a second alternative, which is investing into the private equity solutions out there, which are traditionally infrastructure funds. Unfortunately, that's not a pure play investment into a tower investment. That's one investment in 200 that actually buy into just the towers. So there's no real way to get true exposure to the tower companies that way. And then you have the ability to buy shares from a company like ours, Tower One, the only micro cap or small cap tower company public globally. On the US, you can buy our stock over the counter, ticker TOWTF. In Canada, you can buy it on the CSE, ticker TO. And in Europe, you can buy it via Frankfurt with our ticker 1P3NF. Towers are a great real estate investment for a multitude of reasons. First of all, the predictable 10-year non-cancelable contracts that each of the towers have is very important. It provides recurring revenue from very financially strong tenant base. Some include AT&T Mexico, Telefonica, Claro. Every time we build a new tower, we build a new tower with a tenant to start with. We don't build any spec towers. We don't build and hope to lease. We build because we have that one tenant to start with. And as we build these towers, we reserve enough space on the towers to provide the ability to add 2 or 3 more tenants to each of our towers, which enhances our yield tremendously. The towers, unlike other real estate, require very low maintenance and human involvement. You've seen that through the COVID period, one of the only asset classes that weathered the storm without a true impact was the REITs that were involved principally in the telecom infrastructure space. And finally, the value creation that we've been able to prove over the last 5 years, where on average, any sale that we've completed, we've had a return superior to a 3x our investment in less than a 5-year period. And this is posed to continue, right? The drivers for growth principally come from the data requirements that everyone's, nowadays having. We started off with phones, then added text messages, went on to emails, then went on to Skype, added other video, Netflix. Now everyone's streaming on a more active basis, and this requires not only for the infill of additional towers, but for more towers to be built to be able to sustain that data growth that is basically growing at more than 30% year over year. And more, and in addition to that, I would add that the connectivity requirements that we had pre-COVID are now more visible with post-COVID requirements, where the network had to be redesigned.